Wonderful.
Okay, here we are. Welcome to Women Investing in Women. I'm so excited for our guest today, Shay. Hey, Shay girl.
Hi, how are you guys? I'm so excited for today's topic. I think it's long overdue.
Yes, absolutely. So the idea of just doing these weekly lives before the TV show actually kicks off is just to get people excited about the TV show, the tour, the global tour, to talk a little bit about what it is that we're doing, how we're connecting, how we're creating a global sisterhood, and how we're ensuring that women are investing back into women. So today I have the pleasure of having Shay, who's the co-founder of Conscious App, here. And today we're going to be talking about tech, AI, and gender biases, right? And so, Shay, do you want to kick us off with a little bit about what Conscious App is? What do you guys do? And then how you and I came to be and how this conversation ended up happening.
That's an interesting story. First of all, thank you for this opportunity. I feel honored. And I can't believe it that just like a couple days after we met, we're already here on the live stream. So I really, really appreciate what you're doing here and the impact you're having and the message you're spreading. So definitely an honor to be here. As you said, I am the co-founder of Conscious, and the whole business kicked off because me and my co-founder Karin, we felt lost in life. Life is becoming very complex. There is no traditional paths, and people don't like to choose because there's too many options, and there is this thing called decision paralysis. So we definitely saw that there is an issue there, and that although technology is advancing, the skill of focusing on what makes us human and how we can promote that still is somehow unspoken about and a little bit underrated. So we were like, okay, we have the technology, it is ripe, we have the AI is able to access multiple points and understand you as a person. So why not bring the human touch in there and make it help human beings know clear what they want in life? And we thought, where to start better than in the industry where people already care about this, which is the coaching industry, people who educate and leave impact on people and help them transform. And that's why we are building a system for coaching companies to scale their own methodology. And we're not asking them to give up their methods, because we think at core of every human being and also businesses, there is a uniqueness about being yourself that is your ultimate competitive edge.
That's right.
And we want to promote that. And working with AI, of course, we also had to deal with, okay, where does AI have risks that we can mitigate? And we came across this very specific fact that AI is biased.
Yeah. Period.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is. It is biased. And I really wanted to talk about why that is today, and what we can do or what we should do about this before it's too late, because this technology is being scaled and the core of it is yet not ready to be at that scale. You don't want to scale something that is biased towards genders and towards race.
Yeah, and I think this is a good point. Actually, it's a couple of points that I wanted to elevate that you just mentioned. One is the human connection and the human touch. I think that oftentimes people are, one of the fears, I think, around technology and AI is this idea that we'll lack human compassion, that we'll lack human connection. And I will say that a lot of times when I'm having these AI conversations, the idea that actually the human connection actually becomes much more important, because there has to be some kind of relationship, some kind of trust in the thing that you are building. And the way that you do that is through these human connections and these pathways. And yesterday I kicked off another podcast, The Invaluable Educators, if I'm not busy enough. But what we talked about there was that actually schools should move from doing foundational learning like reading, writing, math, because that actually is skill sets that AI can do. You've got the ability to learn that by watching YouTube, et cetera, And what we should be focusing on is what are the core tenets that make someone a good person, a good human being: kindness, collaboration, the ability to be flexible, empathy, compassion. And then how do you rate for those? So I love when I'm talking to you, when I've met you, and you were saying, like, we're trying to solve for this problem, right? We're trying to give people a methodology around what does it mean to have true, authentic human connection. And then how does technology help to sort of sort that out and make us think through what are those beautiful touch points that are really important that we can, I don't want to say measure, because frankly, I think too many things are measured and too many things have become statistical, but that are, I guess, quantifiable in some way, or quality, or there's some kind of quality that we can bring to the discussion and some depth to the discussion, learning around these large language models, which I think is the beauty of what AI can do, is around how do you take these big data sets and then make them into something that makes sense and is transferable to us as, to us, to the layperson who may not know all of the technological, ins and outs. Yeah, right. So I think there's that piece. And then there's the inherent piece that I think there's a belief, I think, that if you use technology, if you use robots, if you use things that are automated, that you have that you mitigate automatically for bias for using those tools. But then when you think about the origin of how they're coming up with the input in order to get the output, which is the real problem here, the input, because we've already lived in such a biased society, the input itself ends up being biased, and therefore the outcomes of what you're listening to or what they're doing are also just continuing to mitigate and propagate stereotypes, and to a harmful degree. So I think, like, I love what we're talking about, because inherently we are trying to push back around the ideas that if things are AI, there's no human connection. No, humanity is so important to the work that we are doing. And then secondly, there is absolutely implicit bias in technology. And then, of course, how do we mitigate for that? So you and I met because I spoke in Marbella. So Shay is, you're in Marbella or Malaga? You're out in...
Malaga, yes, but we met in Marbella, and it's so funny because I did not plan on meeting you. I was just so inspired. You had the panel that you were talking about, and I don't know if people know this, but you have this energy that is so magnifying, like gravitating. And I was just like, I need to talk to her. I need to talk to her. She understands. She just gets it. And funny thing is, for that specific event, I actually just had the free entrance pass, which restricted you from going and attending the networking part of the event. And I just saw you being there, and it's so funny because I tried to get in with like this group of German guys that I talked to. I was like, I belong to the Germans, and the girl at entrance was like, no, you don't. And I'm like, yes, ask them. And then she sent me out. Obviously, she was like, no, you're not. And so I sat outside and I was like, how do I get in there and introduce myself to Kumara? And ultimately, I went to the girl. I was like, listen, I'm not going to go in there and have free wine or free food. I just need to meet a specific person. I just know I have to do this today. And please give me 5 minutes and I will be out. And so then I came to you, and I remember you were sitting at the table with a big round of people. And I was just like, okay, let's do it. I hope I don't interrupt. And I was just like, hey, Kumara, I really would like to talk to you. This is the idea, And yeah, that's how we met. You told me, catch me later, which I did. And then the organizer, obviously, I think he had empathy. He was like, you know what, girl, just stay here. It's okay. Just stay here. You're killing us. Because I also tried to sneak in there by just staying in the bathrooms. Yeah.
But that's what I said. I was like, I love that go-getter attitude. And I was like, yo, she just came right up to me. I have to respect. And so, of course, I met your business partner / co-founder, and we had like a glass of wine. And then the conversation just really flowed from there. It was amazing. Then the next day, you also attended another panel I was speaking on, which was the Women Investing in Women panel. And afterwards, you and a group of young ladies were just asking me questions. And then you brought up this idea, or you told me about the bias in AI, and then how we can mitigate for it. But like so much of it is already happening. Like it's kind of like on a roll, but let's talk about it. Let's kind of stop. And I was
Yes,
like,
it's
listen, I don't know a lot about it, but let's have a
yeah,
conversation. Let's do a
yeah,
live. And here we are 2 weeks later. two,
yes.
3 weeks
And
later.
I mean, I think something really important that you brought up here is that you address the root cause of this, that the AI itself, the technology itself, is not biased because it is what we feed it with. So it's just like, I always said this, AI is a mirror of humanity. It's going to show us and also replicate exactly the things that we have normalized in society. And so what happens is you have this you have this technology and you feed it with data that I don't know, for example, this percentage of women are CEOs and a much larger percentage of the CEOs are men.
Right.
And so the AI, while not directly, programmed to assume that women are not, for leadership roles, it's going to assume that there is assumptions that the AI will have. And that's one part of like the training data that can be that can boost or push the AI towards being biased. But then there is also the algorithmic bias, which is the algorithm. It works with a reinforcement system. So it sees what's working good, what's giving me positive responses, and what's giving me negative responses. And so, for example, for an HR recruitment tool, it's going to it's going to review the CVs for a specific role, and it's going to see, okay, these type of characteristics were good for this specific role, these were bad. And for some reason, because in most of the, again, higher positions, it was men, it assumed that the keyword women, so for example, let's say on my CV, I say I'm a women's advocate, I was in a women's rights club. The algorithmic discrimination basically decided that women is a negative keyword for good CVs. So it automatically, excluded those CVs.
Yeah. Wow.
And this is just one of the examples of where gender bias can go with AI, and how important it is that we monitor this and how we must do something against this.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. What are some solutions? And I know that you sent me some graphics with some amazing data. So why don't we talk about the solutions first? And then if we do change the model and we talk about the inherent input that women can bring in, how that actually has positive effects for the economy, for the ecosystem, et cetera. So we'd love to hear just some solutions that you've read about that you think are really feasible. And then let's talk about some of the statistics and the data that if we do think more thoughtfully around this, how this is actually going to be beneficial to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think one thing that was specifically highlighted in the studies that I read is that it's so important to have diverse teams.
Yeah.
Because diverse means that I, for example, as a woman, can bring my perspective, can bring my experience, and I can identify biases faster than someone who has not identified or felt or experienced this specific bias. So the focus is really here on having diverse teams, not only men and women, but also diverse racial teams. And actually, really interesting statistic, which is horrifying actually, is that in, for example, the facial recognition AI systems, the error rates for darker skinned women.
Wow. Yeah.
So this is not only a men and women issue. This is also a race issue.
Yeah.
That darker skinned women, the error rates for that is 35%, compared to lighter skinned men that is under 1%. And facial recognition programs, and I want to highlight this, these are so important for all the governmental security programs. And it's just like, I've seen some videos of AI recognizing a specific object as something lethal and threatening in someone's hand if it's a different skin color.
Wow.
Same picture with the same object, just different skin color, and the AI will recognize that object as something threatening because of the skin color of the picture. And
Wow.
so that's how we see this is an issue that is very, very, very urgently that has to be urgently solved. So diverse teams is one way to go for that. And of course, we have to really, really be careful about balancing training data sets. So what is data sets? We train the AI with historical data. The historical data and the history, as we know, maybe does not represent the best sides of human beings at all times. So we sometimes have to create synthetic data, so data that oneself creates, in order to balance that out. So it's not that the one data overweighs the other one and the AI assumes, okay, this must be right, this must be correct then. And then also the algorithmic bias, you should always monitor that. And put levels of measuring whether there is a bias to de-bias the algorithm then. This is what we can do on a technical level.
Right. So it sounds like we're talking about validating the data and having all of these checks in place to ensure that the output is as less biased as possible. I don't know if we can ever get an outcome where things are completely neutral. I mean, hopefully we can eventually. And like, you know,
I don't know.
So I know. I mean, but it's like it's so much because it's really the connection between the machine and the human kind of coming together and then making sure that you sort of validate these large language models. And so there's, of course, as we know, there's open source AI. That's kind of like all your chat GBTs. And then you have corporations who are creating their own internal privatized large language models that folks are using. You know, I think Google has one, and some of these larger corporations are doing that. Do you see sort of a difference in how we can, as a people, maybe work with the open AI's data input sourcing? Do you suggest that people put their images on? So, you know, you've seen the thing where people can make themselves into dolls, and there's been a lot of pushback and concern around, should we be putting our images into AI? Can things go awry if we do those kinds of things? So I'm curious around what your ideas are. And I find that conversation happening more in diverse groups, and especially in groups that have women, right? And so like, if we stop putting our input in, are we perpetuating the problem of a biased outcome? What do you think there?
So I definitely believe that us women, we have an obligation of contributing to this major movement of multiplying societal standards, multiplying what we as humanity already assumed as reality. So what reality do we want to amplify? What reality are we okay with multiplying? Because that's what AI is, basically. Second thing is, I'm not sure if I can give you an answer on whether the whole, taking your data, taking your pictures and putting them on, different things, if that's scary or if that is a really, really great opportunity to balance the data. Because in Germany, there was this whole controversy about Meta AI training their AI with your Instagram history, with your activities. And I know a lot of my friends told me, hey, you really, really need to deactivate it. You need to tell them that you decline this and that you don't want your data to be used. And I was thinking about it. Yes, maybe we are scared of what happens with our data because we know in whose hands our data is.
Yeah.
And I really, really do not want to go too deep into that, but the principle of feeding the AI with data that represents that reality that we want to multiply may not be negative, but having the data put into the hands of companies, corporations, and entities where we're not sure what their purpose is, where they want to head, that's where, for me, it becomes and I believe for a lot of people too, that's where they start to question, okay, do I really want to share my data? And that's, again, a much deeper underlying issue. So it has nothing to do with the AI itself, but who is actually using the AI and what it is used for.
Yeah, and I think that's true for any technology, right? It's like, whose hands did this belong to? And this brings up another piece. And I think, again, what I'm uncovering when I'm having these conversations is there's three themes that really come out, which is the human connection, the trust, so i.e. the validation of the data. Can we trust that this data is real? And then the other thing is transparency. Are people being transparent with what they're using this data for? And also, are we as consumers being responsible consumers? Like, who all actually reads all of the terms and agreements when you hop onto an app, or you download an app, or you want a new tool? Who actually takes the time to actually read through that? And one could argue that it is actually maybe our responsibility to also read through that and decide if we want to opt in, opt out. And then maybe we can talk to our politicians, our Congress folks, and say, like, this is not fair, because maybe these tools are so ingrained in society, we need them to be functional in some way, shape, or form, and there need to be some regulations around the power and the control around data. So I don't know, I'm just like kind of throwing out some thoughts. Do you have any?
These are super valid thoughts, to be honest. And I believe, well, the consumers nowadays are much more sophisticated. And I believe always where there is a movement up, there is also a contra and movement against that. And so we have these sophisticated consumers who maybe understand the terms and conditions and read through them, but then you have the corporations who are even smarter, they have like these lawyers and these teams, and they find ways to put some sort of terms and loopholes and gray areas into those terms, so that in the end they are the one with the power. Now, whether it is for them to actually have the flexibility to improve the systems for the consumers, or it's some other underlying, intentions, we don't know what that is. I believe we will never know. That is just the nature of life. Yeah. It's just, there is so much uncertainty. But I believe many people are scared now because this is something that genuinely brings this existential question of what is it to be human? Because if we take care of everything that can, like take over your tasks, take over, big areas of our lives, which is education, which is career, which is personal development, in this case, for example, the industry we are in, healthcare, and so on. So now you're like, but where is the value that a human being brings in here? And how can we portray that or replicate that or even cooperate that with the AI technology so that it doesn't harm us as a species, as a society? And if I know the answer, no, I don't know the answer. I just believe we have to keep interacting with it and have an open mind. But as you also said, really, really bring focus to those human skills and those topics that are often slept on, about what it is to be a human, what it is to be a good friend.
Yeah.
What it is to have purpose in life and to act from a position where you're not only going with your ego, but with something that you believe will put impact in this world and actually help others. And so these are the things that I believe, yes, they should be in the education system. They should be focused on. But I'm also afraid to adopt that. It takes time, and I'm not sure if right now it's being supported and it's being implemented fast enough, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're in a time of transition, and whenever there's transition, there's uncertainty, and this is certainly another revolution happening. And I don't necessarily mean AI, but I do mean like the large language models, this idea that we're now focusing, and there's a lot of conversations around the power of being a human being, human empowerment, and creating systems with that centralized idea in mind. And what does that actually mean, feel, and sound like? I mean, I think people are tired of the 9 to 5, 40-hour work week. They feel really burnt out, and then going home, and especially as women, then going home and also managing a household, which is oftentimes falls to women to do that work. Even if they have a partner who is a stay-at-home partner, they still have the expectation that they have to manage the emotions and the scheduling of everybody in the household, right? And so it becomes a really fascinating dichotomy, and you see a lot of people kind of pushing back on both ends, right? People want it to go swing way back to where it used to be, and then you've got women who oftentimes are like, no, this is not how we want our lives to be. And I think your point about AI coming in and taking some of these monotonous tasks, which is what I'm going to just call them, they're monotonous tasks, they're automated kind of things that we can do. Wouldn't it be great if we can get back our 40-hour work week and only have to work productively for quote unquote 10 hours a week, and then the rest of the time we're doing things that are impacting our community, that are making sure that our society is the kind of society that we all want to live in, that we want to raise children in, and we're creating this utopian society for generations to come. I agree. I don't know if this will happen in our lifetime necessarily. I mean, who knows? Hopefully we get to see the fruits of our labor, but I do think of I think it's called the 777 rule, which means, you make decisions thinking about 7 generations after you. And I think so, therefore, if 7 generations after me, we have created this society that is much more about embracing our humanity and less about being capitalistic and being competitive from a financial standpoint, I think that it's worthwhile for us to have these conversations and put these things in place and try as much as possible to ensure that we eliminate as much as possible the biases that are happening within the AI, and also embrace the fact that technology is a tool, and we have to use tools responsibly. We have to use all tools responsibly.
That's true. That is absolutely true. There's like 2 things I really want to dive deeper into, and I really want to know your opinion about. The first thing is the role of working. So you said that the 40-hour week will be eliminated or reduced to 10-hour week, which I really would love to believe that. As a startup founder, currently I'm battling 60 hours weeks. Um, but I don't know. Are we human beings made to not work as much? I think work sometimes, I know, like, I'm not talking about draining work, but in the end, like, work that fills you with purpose. What's the role of that in this shift? This is my first question.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So to me, when I'm talking about work, I do mean just kind of like the soul sucking work, the sort of, I have to be in the office, I have to do this thing to pay my bills, that is not fulfilling. And so maybe we should come up with 2 different terms. So like there's just drudgery. So maybe that's what I'll call it, the drudgery of 40-hour work week. And then maybe, because I still think like, unfortunately, we'll probably still always have to do administrative tasks that we don't want to do. So if we can reduce that to 10 hours, and then the rest of the time can be about what is the impactful work that I'm doing? What is my heart's passion? What is the love that I'm having? And of course, part of the conversation that also needs to change, and I don't know if we knew we were going to go here, is the idea of what do we value and what's compensation, right? And so we do have to start thinking differently about which fields get which kind of salaries, how are salaries defined nowadays? Yes. We think like part of this conversation to get to this utopian society is saying that like we value heart work, and we value our nurses, and we value our educators, and we want to flip where our money and our resources go from a salaried perspective, then maybe we also decide, like, why is everything so expensive? Can we get to a place where things don't have to cost so much? Does the cost of living have to be so high? I mean, when you're looking at the profit margins of most of our companies, and if you're looking at the disparity in wealth and income between the haves and the have-nots, you realize that there are absolutely multiple ways that we could reduce spending, we could reduce cost, if we can get to a place that we care about human beings first. And that's the piece that I think needs to, like, be sussed out. And I think that when you can take away the drudgery from people's lives, and they can start thinking about what are the things that actually make me happy, because the drudgery actually serves a few purposes. It makes you really tired, burnt out. You can't think straight. You're always in survival mode, and you can't think about, like, what actually makes me a happy person, like what makes me joyful. And oftentimes because you're in survival mode, you're probably just exuding negativity through no fault of your own. So how can you even become a positive being if you don't even have the time and the space to do that? And so if we can figure out ways to take away that drudgery work, and then do more of the humanness, the human work, I guess is what I'll call it, the passion work, the value work. Why am I here on this earth? What is the value that I'm bringing to society? And really, there's no way you're going to make me believe that, like, working as middle management is super important to society. No, it's not. Being an educator is super important to society. That's no offense to anyone who's in middle management. I'm just saying, like, those people are not necessarily fulfilled, because, like, what kind of positive impact are they really having in the world? And that's why, I was mentioning the other day, I grew up in the 80s, and there was all of these movies about people hating their jobs, and they're working in these cubicles, they looked exactly the same, and they hated their bosses, and, like, no one was happy working. And honestly, I think that's still true today for most people. And so figure out that piece.
I agree. I absolutely agree with people having to figure out what really fulfills them. And it really actually relates to the second question I had for you, which is, well, this whole topic of AI, it brings the question of, are we an outcome-driven society? Because that's what the AI is doing now. It's giving us all these cool outcomes without us having to really put in the work, or walk the way to that outcome. And what does the way mean for the outcome? So I was listening to this one podcast the other day of The Diary of a CEO. It's my favorite podcast, with Stephen Bartlett. And he was talking, him and Simon, this man who has this great impact on well, he's writing this book about friendship, and he talks about this human element of like caring for each other. And for me, my question is, if the outcome is automated and there with just one click, is the way there going to become something that's important for us? And what is that shift? And I know that this might be a little bit complex right now, or maybe I'm not, like, able to say it in a way that it's super comprehensive, but isn't it oftentimes the steps towards our goals that really, really make us the human beings we are, instead of reaching that goal?
I think so. I mean, I think the journey is always the thing. And oftentimes people reach a goal and then they create another goal, because it's like, okay, well, now what's the next thing? I think the journey is really important. And I forget what study this is, but basically someone who did, like, end of life care. So, people who are going to hospice or whatever. No one ever regrets, like, that they didn't make a certain amount of money, or they weren't the CEO, or this, that, and the other. People regret letting relationships lapse, or not being there for their children because they were so busy working, or so the end of life regret is always about the lack of human connection that people have had, right? And people, so I think, to your point, that we have lost the way in the way that we have brought society in being such a outcome driven society, and also having a limited view and definition of what success is, also having a limited view and definition of who are worthy human beings. And oftentimes that's about, we decide that we like someone because, or we admire someone because usually they have money, and that to us means success in some way, shape, or form, though we don't know if they're actually success in terms of being well-rounded, positive human beings. And so why don't we start changing the paradigm? And I think, to your point, we are going to start seeing more people caring so much more about the journey, right? And certainly you and I are, I think, from different generations. And so I think your generation, the generations beyond you, think much more thoughtfully about this, right? You're like, I want to live a balanced life. I know people who are like picking up their laptops and are like, I'm not going back into the office. I'm going to work from anywhere in the world. I'm going to travel. The amount of blogs that have come up that were people who are just living in their RVs and vans and taking these amazing trips and seeing and getting so much wealth and experience through life, right? And I think, yeah, so we're seeing so much more of that. And I think that that's the direction we're going to go into. And technology is going to continue to allow folks to be able to do that. And you don't need to be a millionaire to do it, right? If you can connect to the internet and you have a little device and you can figure out ways to have an impact in the world, make a little bit of money, and figure it out. People are doing it, and they're doing it successfully, and they are probably some of the most joyous, peaceful folks, right? They're living a great life out here, and I think we're gonna see a lot more of that. I mean, certainly we're in a weird position because we certainly have folks who still believe in the old guard, who are really pushing back against this.
Like, opinions are super, super mixed, but you know what? I am happy about that. Yeah. I am happy about that everyone is able to voice their ideal lives and their ideal opinions on this topic. And I believe everyone should have this right to choose ultimately what fulfills them, because I know so many people, they love to work 40 hours a week. They really, really enjoy it, and it fulfills them. And it's because they know that the work and the effort they're putting in is for a higher purpose for themselves, and they fall in love with that journey in that way. And then there is people who fall in love with life by living life and not having to really bind themselves to a specific career or specific ambitions. I believe that's something fantastic and something that we should celebrate and be glad that we still have that. But yeah, I also have, I don't know, there's just like, although I am in the AI industry myself, I am like, this is not only a revolution, it feels like an evolution of human beings, of how is it going to be for us to survive and to live. Is survival really becoming more and more about being mentally okay and being able to kind of have a specific position in the society, to have an impact? Or is survival actually just like shape shifting into more sophisticated strategies of surviving? So let's say I have to have this amount of money so I am able to have a stable family home, so I can survive in these political situations, and so on and so on. I mean, there's always these factors. Yes. And I believe this is also something that multiple societies and countries are dealing with, yet we are very lucky to be in countries where this is more advanced, but what is the impact on those societies that were not able to go through the stages that, for example, our countries went through, and now they're, being confronted with this ultimate technology. And I think that's where the questions and also the concerns may come in, is like, are we prepared for this? Are we actually prepared for this? Because what do we know about being a human being that we definitely want this technology to reflect back to us? What
Mm.
and I love how we keep coming back to this question because yeah, it really is that. I think that's really the key of this topic and this debate about AI, is like, what are we as human beings that we want this technology to mirror up back to us? And if we're scared of it, is it because we're scared of parts of human being that already exist that we don't want to be multiplied in this technology? Do we feel threatened by that? How do we address that?
I think that's a really good point. Yes, I think there are dark sides to being humans that we see. And yeah, do we want to give people the power to multiply the negativity and lean into the baser sides of what it means to be human? And I think like what's great about this conversation, we're talking technology, but we're also saying so many essential questions, right? Like, what does it mean to be human? Are we ready for this new evolution, revolution? What does it actually mean? What happens to societies who have had a digital divide and don't necessarily have access to this technology? Though I will push back here just a little bit and say that I do think that what we are seeing for technology is that it's becoming more accessible to those who may not have a lot of money, who may not have a lot of educational resources. It is actually allowing for people to be connected. And so you're seeing some global movements, right? So we can talk about what's going on with countries that used to be colonized by France, who are like, we're going to create our own currency, and we're going to like not use French currency anymore. And like, what does that actually mean for France? And the way that they're able to communicate because of technology, in ways that they weren't able to communicate before. We're seeing some of the work that's happening in Burkina Faso and some of the revolutions that are going on. So in some ways, you can see also how technology allows for the transfer of communication. It is not worried about borders, right? Like you can totally have these kinds of, you're in Spain, I'm here in the United States. We can have these conversations, and people are probably listening from all over the world and start thinking about, oh wait, what does this mean? What does this make sense, right? And so like, there's no longer, or we're trying our best to mitigate the power of one word, one voice by having these platforms. And so technology has allowed us to do those kinds of things. And I think as technology continues to revolutionize, we're going to see much more adoption. And I think it's going to now allow for communities to have ownership, for communities to be able to think about how do we become empowered as a people. What is our society? Do we want to change our country name? Do we want to keep our colonizer name, or want to come up with a new name that really represents us as a people, as a society? And you're able to have those kinds of conversations, that kind of dialogue. So I think this is fascinating. I don't know if we'll ever know the answer. Are we ready? I guess it doesn't matter. It's here.
It's here. Of course, and whether we're ready or not, that's true. And I love that you bring that point of being able to be a little bit eye level, because I think that relates really, really well to one of our first points that we made about, when you log into an app and you have these terms and conditions. Nowadays, I can actually screenshot that and send that to AI and have it actually analyze it for me, and do some legal work there. And that is, I believe that is also a really, really big benefit of AI, to bring that eye level communication and also the knowledge to a more accessible and more structured level, so that people all over the world can access it, can make sense of it, can use it in their own context. Which again, I love to talk about how AI is so flexible and we can just integrate it into our context of being to really find the biggest benefit for ourselves individually and uniquely. And so that's where I'm totally on your side. That's where I see the potential of AI, is to be able to really leverage your uniqueness, because you have this tool that will actually recognize patterns, that is going to be able to verbalize thoughts that you have that you don't know how to communicate, to who you have to communicate, maybe what the first step is for you to get there. And I'm so excited to see the people that are going to make use of that technology to bloom and to really fulfill their higher purpose, to bring the impact that they want to bring to this world, because it becomes clearer than ever for them. It becomes more visual than ever for them. I really love to think of those good things that AI is also going to bring for us. And it's here. It's already bringing.
It's already here and it's already doing some work. And so we're actually coming up close to time. And so the one piece that we didn't talk about, so now I'm thinking maybe we just do a part 2, is the importance and the impact of women in AI. There's so many positive outcomes when women are valued in the AI space, are doing their input in the AI space, are builders, developers, users, etc., in the whole ecosystem. I don't want to rush through that. So why don't we table it for a part 2, and that will be just honing in on all the positive stuff that happens when women also are in technology, and especially here in the AI evolution, we'll call it for right now.
100%. And there are so many numbers that provide really great insight into how women elevate this whole movement, the percentage of innovation that is like going higher if there's women involved, the importance of diverse teams, how they detect more errors than just like teams that are not diverse, how fast the adoption rate is, how much higher the user satisfaction is, and also how we can globally benefit from that in a financial way, which is always interesting for people. So yeah, I'm so excited to talk about that and touch on that, and maybe some other really cool topics, because there's just so much that you can talk about.
Awesome. Well, let's do it. So it looks like there'll at least be a part 2, maybe a part 3. Thank you everyone who joined us. Shay, thank you so much. How can people keep in touch with you?
So you can either add our company's Instagram and social media everywhere. We're at Conscious the app. And otherwise my profile, I think it's I don't know how to link that, but my app name is Shahbaby. It's SHAHBABIE. So that's my Instagram username. And thank you so much for having me on this. It's been such a pleasure, and I really love to talk about this with you.
Oh man, I really enjoyed it. And what conversation and questions have we dug up? We don't know all the answers, but I think having the questions helps us think through how we're going to do the work. Again, thank you everyone for joining in. Thank you again, Shay. Peace.
Peace.